this isn't a basic what's Reflect presentation. Done plenty of them, and we try and do something a little bit differently in these prezos for the trade show. So I'm not going to be running you through the A, Bs and Cs of Q-SYS Reflect. You can go out there. We've got a great station set up with Reflect you can interact with and see all of the different feature sets. What I'm talking about today is interfacing Reflect with larger systems. So we're talking about interfacing with ticketing, interfacing with dashboarding, third-party monitoring platforms, and how easy it is to actually integrate Reflect to start seeing your cores through various bits and pieces of different software if you need to. So I just want to talk a little bit about managed services, right? So there's a whole bunch of obvious reasons to do managed services if you're an integrator. You know, ongoing connection with the client, ongoing revenue. But if you saw the talk I just did on Full Stack AV, we talk about all the cool things that cloud and AI are going to bring us in the future, but all of the cool stuff is going to happen post-install, right? So all the value that we see AI and cognitive cloud bringing to the AV industry, most of that value for the customer is going to be post-installation. So if you're not there post-install, you're not going to get to leverage that in the business. So I think beyond all of the obvious choices why managed service is a good thing, I think moving forward, it's going to become more and more important. So I want to just run you through some of the new features very quickly before we jump into the back end. And this is the new Space Manager dashboard. So if you're familiar with Q-SYS Reflect, you know, we've had a dashboard where you can have a look at some sites and filter through them. But this is a much nicer way of visualizing our systems in space, right? So we can easily, if we've got spaces, you know, across the city or across campus or across the country, across the world, it doesn't matter, we can visualize those, instantly jump into our systems. We can go into a building that we see has a and then, oh, a little drop out there, go through a building that has a fault, and then we can, you know, filter down through floor, filter down through system, all of that. So really, really nice way of visualizing our systems. But there's something actually a little bit more important going on in the back end of this. And that is we're redefining the way that spaces are managed in Reflect. And what we're doing is we're using a thing called real estate core, which is an ontology about defining spaces in buildings. It's used by Microsoft and software like Atrius, which is a cloud building management platform. So that means that the data that we bring into Reflect is ported very easily across wider systems for building management and things like that, right? So in the past, we've had organization, site, system, you know, and you can't get too deep with that. Real estate core, you know, provides sort of region, site, building, level, room, zone, outdoor space. You get a heap more options of how you categorize your spaces, which makes it much more logical when you're looking through Reflect. So we have a fantastic new feature coming. This is running, we have a test site. This isn't live in the production version just yet, but we have it running on our test site just outside. And this is our reliability timeline. So obviously a big part of managed services is troubleshooting. Now, if you've had to troubleshoot a bunch of systems that go down at the one time, generally speaking, you have to have a look at event log, you see a bunch of stuff, and then you've got to try and correlate events from multiple processes in all those event logs to try and work out what's going on. With the timeline view, we can see, all right, 3 systems all went down at precisely the right time. We can then filter into there, find out specifically what time they went down, and call IT and tell them it was their problem at 4:50 p.m. Okay, so if something goes down, a rack room goes down, anytime you see multiple problems on a core, it's much, much easier to troubleshoot than trying to dig through a bunch of logs. Now, with that reliability data, we now start to look at some of the analytical pieces that are going to start coming out of Reflect. So this is our first sort of foray into analytics in Reflect, and that's actually looking at how reliable our systems are. Now, part of managed services, whether it be an integrator managing it or your own internal teams, is obviously keeping your systems working properly. So you can instantly see what are your most unreliable rooms? So if you've got some downtime in those very rare occasions these days, you can send out your team, hey, these rooms have been really unreliable for us, get in there and try and work out what's going on. Now, alternatively, if the boss says, hey, we've got a very important meeting, what is a room that will never, ever, ever fail? And you can see what your most reliable rooms are to stick them in there. You can easily just sort of select up to 3 rooms and then get a little bit of metrics as well on how those rooms compare. So now we're going to talk a little bit about onboarding, right? So this is all very cool to talk about, but if it's an absolute pain to get your systems into Reflect, then it's going to be tricky. And if you've worked with some cloud monitoring platforms in the past, you'll know that some of them are, very, very tricky to get a whole bunch of data into those systems. Now with Reflect, it's a couple of clicks. We have our Q-SYS system already built in Q-SYS Designer. We jump onto the core manager of that core, and we can test our connection up to the cloud, so we can kind of troubleshoot that connection too, and then we just copy our authorization code. Then all we have to do is jump over to Reflect, and we can add a core to the site just by pasting that authorization code. Now, no matter how complex that Q-SYS Designer file is, how many bits of inventory we have connected, whether they're third-party devices or Q-SYS devices, we can get them into Reflect with a couple of clicks. Now, for those of you that know me, you know I'm not afraid of a live demo. I often prefer to do all my demos live. The only reason I'm not doing this live is I don't have enough time to undo all the things that I'm going to show you in this demo before the next demo. So I filmed this live. There I'm adding a system to my home office at the beach in Wollongong. And you'll see there that once that core is added, we can easily just build out that space, add it to the space, and then in a couple of seconds, you're going to see it populate on the map. So really, really simple to add cores, get them into Reflect, and this is free, right? So the reliability metrics I was talking about before, that's part of the Reflect Plus package, which is a paid service. But getting cores into Space Manager is free, right? So there's no excuse, unless the client doesn't literally have a connection to the cloud, to not start getting cores onto Reflect. And if you're not familiar with how Reflect works in the back end, it's unlike a lot of other cloud monitoring platforms where every single device has to connect to the cloud. The Q-SYS core aggregates all of your local AV devices on a LAN port and can use one of the other LAN ports to send that information up to the cloud securely. So it's a single connection to the cloud. There's no internal switching, so there's no security issue of going in via that cloud connection and then getting access to your AV VLAN. Very, very secure way of doing it. So let's talk about real-time alerting, right? So obviously if you're doing managed services, if you're looking after your own systems, you need to be alerted when something goes wrong. Now Q-SYS has a few different ways of doing this, and I'm going to kind of go through the pros and cons of each of these ways. So basically an alert will come in from a system, and then Q-SYS can send out alerts in a few different ways, right? So the easiest way is email. We all understand email. There are, of course, some tools in there to stop you getting spammed. So you can say, hey, don't send me an email more than every hour. Send me an email once at 9 a.m. when I get in to check on my systems. But once those emails come in, they can sometimes be a little bit hard to manage. They can be hard to filter through the data. We also have direct integration into Microsoft Teams. So if you're not familiar with adaptive cards in Teams, these are these little cards that sort of pop up and give you some information. We have a way of very, very easily sending Reflect alerts to adaptive cards in Teams channels, and I'm going to show you again how to set that up in real time. It's very, very simple. We have Slack integration with webhooks for those using Slack, and then we also have generic webhooks. And these are actually quite powerful, and I'm going to run you through why that is very, very shortly. So, we get an email, gives us all the information about the issue, and then we can click a link and get direct access to that site in Reflect. So, very, very simple. We go one step further into those running Teams channels. And if you're not familiar with workflows, these are a part of Teams. Use a thing called Power Automate to basically set up some various things that can happen in Teams given an input. So the input is a webhook from Reflect, and there's already a predefined flow for this. Just send webhook alerts to channel. So we just click on that. We've just got to give it a little name, and then we choose what team and what channel we want that alert going to. So pretty straightforward, right? We're then going to jump in and into that flow, and then you can kind of see what you can do. You can troubleshoot these flows from within here. You can see if you're setting up complex flows, you can see where they're breaking. But this is a really, really simple flow, so there's nothing to do apart from click on that little link, and then we're going to copy that URL, right? So then all we have to do is jump back into Reflect, go to our notification settings. You can see there, Teams webhook notifications. Click that enable button, paste that URL, and we are now good to go. Okay, so very, very straightforward. Again, that was just done in real time, and there's my alert, okay? So you can see these adaptive cards. This is what they look like. There's an adaptive card builder online from Microsoft has, and you can, look at the code. Obviously, Q-SYS understands how to send adaptive card format, which is basically just a big JSON string that's formatted in a certain way with some certain headings to make things bold, and you can actually alter these too. So this comes in by Reflect by default, nothing to do. Click on View in Enterprise Manager, get direct access to that in the cloud. But you can, once you get into these workflows, do some interesting things. So you can pull that data in. I could add a little box saying fixed, and then when one of my team fixes the problem, they can click fix. It can update that card saying, yep, the problem was fixed. It can pull in the user, tell me who fixed it and things. So there are some quite powerful tools that you can do with workflows in Teams. Now, this next one I'm going to show you is using a generic webhook, right? So this is a piece of software called Zapier. It's a workflow piece of software, and it's quite handy for sitting in between two apps if you want to customize some data in between those two apps. Now, if you're not familiar with webhooks, they're incredibly common in web apps, sending information, and then JSON is just a big formatted string that has a bunch of fields and a bunch of values for those fields. And it is by far the most popular way of sending data between web apps. So the web apps that you're going to integrate with are going to understand JSON. So all we drag a couple of little actions in here, a catch hook action, and again, just gives you a URL that you can throw into Reflect. And I'm using Zendesk. It's a ticketing system here. Now all of these little sort of alerts and things like that you see are all actually drag and drop elements. I haven't had to do anything. I haven't had to write any code. It just understands JSON. Alert message, organization name, site name, all of that stuff now just appears as a drag and drop element. So I open it up and I've actually just typed the word site and system and message. And then I just drag these elements across, and now I have a ticket formatted exactly the way I want, right? No coding, just drag and drop, and away we go. So all there is left to do now is just to jump back into Reflect. You can go down to the generic webhooks in your notification settings. And as soon as we paste that, we are now ready to go. So I'm going to jump in this again, doing this live back at my home office on the beach in Wollongong. I had a little call there. I'm going to send it into an alert. We see it there in Space Manager. And then just going to jump across to our ticketing system. And then a couple of seconds later, we have a ticket. We jump into there. The transfer of data between Zapier and Zendesk is very, very simple. And there's my card and the way I formatted it. Okay, so really, really simple to set this stuff up. Now I'm going to talk about the REST API. So if you don't know what a REST API, again, it's by far the most popular way of API access into web apps. It is understood by just about every web app integration system that you're going to deal with. If it isn't, there's always a third-party plugin, and if there isn't one of those, then you shouldn't be using it. So, the REST APIs are everywhere in web apps. And the way they work, they don't push out real-time alerts. You send your dashboard or monitoring platform sends requests, and then Reflect sends a bunch of data back again in JSON form. So makes that data very, very easy. to customize later on. And the way that this is set up, it's very, very simple, is just using a thing called a bearer token. So this is a way of authenticating all of the different connections you have between apps. Now, it's not like username and password and you've got to set all that up for each app. You just basically get a token. It's only a one-time thing, so once you've copied that token, it disappears and you won't be able to get it back. You've actually got to revoke it and add a new one. But it's a really simple way of just, testing some connections. You've got a new piece of software, grab a new token, throw it in there. You don't like that piece of software, revoke that token at any time and it disappears, okay? That connection closes, okay? So very secure way. And of course, we're using HTTPS, so those tokens are encrypted on their way through. So really simple. Now you see here, we've got this button, download API file, right? Now, if you've ever had to write control code for AV, I know someone here that has done a hell of a lot of it. It's usually a bloody nightmare. And you go looking for their API document, and then you get it, and you go, who wrote this bloody thing? And then you you go through it, and you swear you've done exactly what they've said in that API doc, and still doesn't work. And then there's some bit they've forgot to tell you that you need to do, like a checksum or something. And then a lot of trial and error, and a whole lot of experience, and then you get it working, right? That's not the case with REST APIs. So we hit download API file, and this comes down in a format called YAML. It's very similar to JSON but without all the brackets, so it's much easier to read by a human. JSON's usually used when you're passing data between apps. YAML's usually used when a human needs to actually read it. But most REST APIs come down in a form of YAML. And the API is just sitting there. Then we can use a piece of software called Postman. So this is a piece of software for testing APIs, free download from the internet. And then all we basically have to do, so we don't even have to hit that import button. I just grab that YAML file we've just downloaded, drag and drop into Postman. And now my API is basically ready to test. There's only one step left to do, and that's just grab that bearer token that we copied earlier. So there's the API. I just jump into the authorization, dump that bearer token in there, and we are ready to go. So the way these, generally when you're doing REST APIs work, you'll have a base URL that you use. And then you'll see that when you're connecting up with different apps, you'll see this all the time, where you'll get base URL. It just reports back to that one location, so you don't have to type it in every time. And then / and then the request that you're sending. So this is cores. I hit send, and there's all of the data about all my connected cores, right? I haven't had to interpret any documents or anything like that. And it's ready to go. And because it's JSON, the computer understands it. You can preview it, and it just automatically brings it all into a table without me having to write some JavaScript or something like that to transform that data. And then you'll see there I can just dig through all of the various requests that I can send from the API. They're all there. I can click on any one. They tell you what they are. I can hit send or test and instantly see what that information's getting back. So when you're integrating with third-party pieces of software, you can test with this. You don't have to worry, is it something that I'm doing in this software or that software? You can easily test it, see exactly what information that you're getting back, ready to go. So this final example is called Jet Admin. It's just a piece of software for building dashboards and web apps. It's a low-code or no-code environment. You can build out some cool-looking dashboards. And this is just connected back up to the REST API. So the vast majority of this, I'm just pulling directly from standard API commands. I've done a little bit of trickery to get that coffee count going. But again, that's using a media request via the Reflect API and pulling some data directly off the core. But effectively, setting up this was as easy as grabbing those commands from Postman and throwing it in there and throwing in my bearer token. I choose my data source, and then I choose the way I want it to look, and I have a working dashboard, right? So really simple. And of course, when we're talking about dashboarding, usually we're talking about, the dashboarding tools in Reflect are fantastic, but if you're integrating with a larger building, larger systems, then you may have an overarching dashboarding system you want to use. Now this one here, you'll see the ticketing system that is using the REST API from Zendesk. Those links still work that we set up in Zapier before. That data just flows in the same way that Reflect does because everything understands REST APIs and JSON. So that just gives you a little bit of a understanding of what goes on in the back end, and really it ain't that complex. Again, all of that stuff that I've just done was all done in real time. So we've got ticketing systems set up, Teams webhooks, dashboarding. Obviously building the dashboard takes a little bit of time, but doing those connections is very, very straightforward. And I'm just going to finish on, everything comes back to full stack AV. If you didn't hear the presentation I just did prior to this one, full stack AV is all about architecting Q-SYS in a way that we can get to that cognitive cloud layer. And Reflect is going to be a huge part of that cognitive cloud layer moving forward. So really, with the free tier, there's no excuse not to get your cores onto Reflect. Start using it, start seeing what it can do, and it's going to be a very, very powerful piece of the Q-SYS platform as we move forward. So thank you very much.